Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Intentional Carnivore. I want to welcome you guys back tonight. We have a special guest with us. I want to welcome Mr. Bart Kay. He's no stranger to you guys, and I'm honored to have him here on the show. We talk all the time about the carnivore diet being the species appropriate diet or the proper human diet, however people want to refer to it. So can you give us some insight into our body's need for sugar and carbohydrates? Is there something in particular that we cannot get from meat that we must have?
Yeah, okay. So the answer to that is quite unequivocal, and it's a definite no. I need to caveat all my statements around this is generalized information for the general public. Mm-hmm. There are one or two people floating around out there who, for reasons of having already damaged their metabolism quite badly, do tend to do better as part of their healing process by having some carbohydrates still in their diet, which we then very, very slowly, very glacially wean those people off over months and months. However, for the general public, the general rule of thumb is there any dietary requirement for carbohydrates in the human diet? The answer is absolutely, unequivocally no, not one single gram ever. The body has a metabolic pathway called gluconeogenesis, which if you break it down, glucose, neo, new, genesis, the formation of new sugar from non-sugar precursors. Most notably, those are the glycerol backbones of fat molecules. So when your body breaks down fat, oxidizes the fatty acid chains, there's a glycerol backbone left behind that can be transmuted into sugar. The other thing that we can turn into sugar is amino acids. There are certain amino acids which are gluconeogenic in nature, and also monocarboxylates such as lactate, which is produced by cells, most notably when you're exercising.
So that would produce the lactic acid, correct?
Well, a lot of people refer to it as lactic acid. It's no such thing. In fact, it's lactate that is produced by the cells. Mm-hmm. And it's the lactate that causes any fluid to which it's added to change its pH. But it was not in the first instance lactic acid. It was always lactate that was produced as such.
Okay.
And the effect on the acidity occurs due to a thing called the law of electroneutrality, which we can get into another day if you like. It's a technicality, and it's not a huge point, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because you mentioned it. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I better mention that. Yeah. The human body does not produce lactic acid; it produces lactate.
Absolutely. So, well, I mean, yeah. I think it's important to be accurate. You know, if I'm wrong, you know, that's what I've always kind of operated under. If I'm wrong, correct me, because otherwise I'm going to keep being wrong. You know, and it's better to get it figured out and get it right and go from there.
Yeah, you bet.
I heard Dr. Kiltz talking about something on an interview that kind of piqued my curiosity, and he was referring to. A lot of people think you come off the sugar and the carbs and all of a sudden your body starts transitioning over to using fat for fuel. But he mentioned that he has a theory or believes that because of the mitochondria using fat, that we always burn fat. But the reason why we see the carbs and sugar burnt so quickly whenever we are introducing that into our system is because, he believes that is because it is not good for our bodies and our body burns it all first, but our body always burns fat for fuel. Could you kind of speak to the science side of that
Yeah. No, Dr. Kiltz is absolutely correct in that regard. The human body is always oxidizing a mixture of fats and carbohydrates, primarily, almost exclusively fats and carbohydrates. There is a small amount of amino acids, protein, that can be oxidized if needs be at various times. And if there's alcohol present, then the body will actually use that for energy as well. That can go through the oxidative pathway. So there are really four things: fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and alcohol. Mm. Under most circumstances, at most times, in any kind of normal body operation, we're talking fats and carbohydrates. The amount of carbohydrate that contributes to the overall oxidative process is determined by how much carbohydrate resource, we'll call it resource, is actually toxin, poison, and contraindicated, but how much of that is around in the bloodstream, in the cell fluids. Yes, the carbohydrates will absolutely be oxidized in preference to the fatty acids at any reasonable level of carbohydrate. And when I say reasonable, it's actually unreasonable is what I'm talking about. So I really should get my verbiage sorted out today. Anything above the natural, normal level of blood sugar will lead to an increase in the concentration of glucose in the cell fluid as well. And that will lock out fat until that sugar has been oxidized, precisely because of its toxicity. Its propensity to physically damage protein structures, fat-containing structures in the human body. The body needs to get the sugar back down to a normal level as quickly as possible. And as such, the processes are, one, burn sugar or oxidize sugar. It's not burning. Oxidize sugar first. And also excess sugar can be transmuted into fat. So they're the main two ways that the sugar is lowered. In an extreme situation, in an emergency situation like uncontrolled diabetes, then you will urinate out a fair amount of sugar as well. It will go directly out through your kidneys.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I mean, you hear so many things, and I guess that kind of leads in, because the way that I had come to understand it and learn it is obviously, our body transitions over. However, I also learned that if you have high, your blood sugar's up, your body releases insulin. As long as your body's releasing high amounts of insulin, it locks your body's ability off to access the burning fat. As you just described, the process of burning off sugars and carbohydrates. And I have always understood this, that the body will then, once you eliminate the carbohydrates from your consumption, your body will always defer to fat for energy before it moves to protein. Because there's always a debate in the carnivore, keto, whatever you will, spectrum. Do I need more fat? Do I need more protein? Which one it is? Drive ourselves, I guess you'd say, crazy over the issue. Can you speak to that? And would the body not go to fat first for energy and before it would use protein?
Okay, so the human body has been evolving on this planet for roughly, it's hard to put exact time frames when something ended and when the next thing started, whatever. The human evolution is thought to begin around about the time that our primate ancestors came down from the trees, stood upright on their back legs, and started hunting megafauna instead of living in trees, eating leaves and fruit. Okay, so that's 4.5 million years ago. The human system has been developing along the lines of the way humans have lived for that long. And in our current speciation, human beings, modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, that's about 350,000 years that we've existed. That's a long time for the positive and negative selection pressures to get this right, or relatively right. So my question really, in response to your question, is why would the human design be so inane as to store fat for later use when there's excess energy, if you like? It's actually mass that we're talking about, mass of food, not energy. when there's excess mass of food taken in and there's spare, your body stores that as fat precisely for the purpose of using that later in times of lean pickings. So when we take down a woolly mammoth, we eat heartily as a tribe for a few weeks. There's always excess. We can store that excess as fat so that in months to come, when there is no mammoth to be had and we're scraping around in the dirt, digging up tubers, roots really is what they were, and boiling those for hours to try and get anything of any value out of that whatsoever, then our body can melt that fat off and use that fat for energy. So why in a purple fit would the human body go, you know what? I know we stored all this fat for later use, and that's what it's for. But instead of that, why don't we melt our very most important structures, the very things that make us who we are, you know, our muscles, for example, our bones, those. Why don't we just melt that down instead? We'll keep this fat on board, but we'll melt all that, you know? Right. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
really?
It is hard to, I think oftentimes too many people make it harder than it has to be. You know, don't overthink it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I lost 245 pounds to date. You know, I lost 2 more pounds since recently, since I talked with you. And I reversed type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, sleep apnea fixed, depression gone. You know what I didn't do? I didn't count fat and protein. You know what I did do? I went and I cooked me a steak because that's what I wanted. I put it on. I had my eggs, whatever. I didn't try to overthink. If I wanted more, I had more. If I didn't have what I normally would have. So, you know,
you used your instinct, the very thing that's evolved over that same 4.5 million years that tells you I'm hungry, eat. Now I'm full, stop eating.
Exactly. And it's amazing how good, whenever you give it the proper nutrition it needs to function properly, how it functions properly. You know, the body.
But Sean, surely you've seen the cave paintings of ancient people putting everything into computer programs to tell them they've been a good boy that day.
Right.
With calculators in their top pockets and stuff. Right next to the pictures on the cave walls of salads.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Tons of salads, you know. I don't know. You know, I go to church and stuff like that, and I hear them talk about, you know, the ark and the flood and those kinds of things. And I'm like, well, I don't ever remember hearing that story told when I was a child about them carrying a bunch of plants and such on the ark. So, you know, it kind of shows me what's important, you know. Yeah. Take that what they will. And I think we get our stress levels up worrying about things that don't matter. And when it's such an easy process and people have been lied to and told so many different things for so long by people who should know better and oftentimes do know better, but they profit from the adverse. So they keep pushing that lie. Such as cholesterol. I was talking to a lady on Facebook last night about her son, and he's 19 years old and went to see a specialist who is going to put the 19-year-old kid with no other, like he runs marathons, he lifts weights, he's not overweight. Otherwise, to hear her tell it completely healthy, is going to be going on statins because of something that he inherited from his whoever, because his cholesterol's high and he eats the carnivore diet.
Right.
And he has no marker. So I said, hey, if cholesterol is our only marker that's high, and should we be worried about this in a 19-year-old kid, you know?
Right. Okay, let's cover that off, and let me be absolutely clear here, really unambiguous, as clear as I possibly can be. I do need to throw my CV around a little bit here because it's important that people understand that I'm not just some bloke talking out of a hole in his head here. Okay. I spent 25 years as a professor of health science. During that period of 25 years, I had 3 different specializations over 3 different epochs of that career, if you like, because I have 3 advanced research degrees, actually, which is quite uncommon. Most people just have 1. So the first one I did was the physiology of rest and exercise. Then I did a nutrition-based thesis. And finally, I did one on cardiovascular pathophysiology. heart disease, specifically atherosclerosis. Okay, so this is something I really understand very, very well. Let me be very clear here. Prescribing statin medication to anybody, let alone a 19-year-old fit, healthy young man, is not only not a good idea, it is contraindicated, dangerous, reckless, and criminally negligent. End of discussion. Okay. Statin medications are a dangerous, contraindicated metabolic poison with not one single day of life extension demonstrable as even associated with the taking of statin medications. Not one single day. There is no benefit, so the cost-benefit analysis, therefore, is irrelevant. If there is no demonstrable benefit, we are done with that analysis before we talk about the very, very real risks of statin medication, including, let me just throw you one example just for fun, an 11,500% increase in the relative incidence of ALS, which is a universally fatal neurodegenerative disorder. People who take statin medications are 11,500% more represented in ALS statistics than a general population not taking statins. Now, sure, they're small numbers absolute-wise because it's a very rare disease, but you get diagnosed with ALS, that is a death sentence. You will die. And if you're 11,500% more likely to get that disorder taking statin medications than you are not, then I would expect on the flip side of that, there to be a massive, demonstrable, unequivocal, and clear benefit to statin medications. None exists. It is criminal.
And obviously I am not a doctor and I do not have a research degree, so I could definitely not speak with the certainty that you and others could. And I told the lady this, and I said, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not these things. However, I did work EMS and I have seen some stuff and whatever, and that's neither here nor there because I just want to use logic. You're saying that this is your son, this is his health issues, and I'm not even trying to tell you what to do with your son because it's not my business, first of all. However, if do not take a doctor's word for something just because he's saying it with no proof, no nothing. At bare minimum, the only thing that I could tell you to do is take your questions in there, get your questions answered. Before you walk out of there, the only thing I have heard Ken Berry talk about before is having a CAC score done. If there's no proof that the doctor can show you and you don't have anything else to go on, tell them you want to know that there's plaque around the heart for whatever reason, and you have cleared that up because the statins are not going to help the problem if there hypothetically was one.
Correct.
He shouldn't be. But it was hard for me to believe that a 19-year-old kid in that kind of shape had reached the point to where he had plaque build up around his artery, around his heart,
He won't have.
No, there's no way. It just does. I've seen a lot of things, and I'm not saying it's impossible because I see stuff all the time that I just don't believe. However, I just, I would have, if it were my son, I would be fighting for some answers. And if you don't have some proof, I told her, I said, it was because he potentially could have a heart attack in the next 4 years. I said, well, I could potentially get snatched up in the parking lot by a pterodactyl like the movie Jurassic Park. I could potentially get hit by a parked car in the parking lot on the way to my car to go home. Lots of potentials. Anything could happen. You need answers before you start feeding stuff into your kid. But anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely. It's contraindicated. It's dangerous. It's reckless. It is criminal activity. There is no two ways about this. The medical profession, physicians, are required as a condition of their registration as a physician to behave in a certain way. It is paint by numbers. It is toe this line. It is stand on these footprints. If that doctor steps out of line and thinks for him herself, they can be struck off the medical register.
Mm-hmm. Malpractice.
So all they are doing is complying with the registering body telling them how they must act. Nonetheless, they are complicit with the criminal act, and the criminal act is prescribing statin medications to anybody under any circumstances ever. No two ways about it. That is a criminal act in my mind. It's a criminal act that is legally mandated. And, you know, let's face it, that's not the only criminal act that's legally mandated of late, but that's for another day.
However, you know, I think nothing will ever change until people who know better start holding people who refuse to do better accountable. I mean, it's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, each one of us as an individual in the marketplace does have a voice, does have a vote.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not engage with the medical profession for anything other than, for example, you go to the emergency room because you've broken your leg or your arm or something and that needs treatment, trauma, injury, that kind of thing. Let's say you need an emergency operation for some health issue that's developed, fine. Allopathic medicine is reactionary, and those are the things, that's the place for that stuff. That's what it should be used for. There's absolutely no business of an allopathic physician telling you anything about preventative medicine. They have no idea about that. None at all. What they do is peddle big pharma sponsored dogma, ideology, and worst of all, they're actual poisons mostly. Name me one single pharmacological drug available on the prescription schedule to allopathic physicians that cures any condition at all. Name me one.
all of them mask symptoms. They don't cure them. They mask them. It's not going away with the problem at all.
Yeah, it's symptom management. Actually, allopathic medicine has no interest in curing anything, because you cure someone's illness, that's a customer lost.
And it's got to do better.
Yep.
Is there one issue in particular more than others that comes to mind that people have wrong about the carnivore diet in relation to the exercise physiology and recovering? Like, because I've heard it a million times, you know, dealing with, I want to start working out or whatever, and or they do work out even for that matter, and I'm telling them about carnivore and they're interested, but they just don't. They talk about the carb loading and thing. We've already talked about the carbs. Obviously, is there another misconception that you've dealt with working out and maybe recovery or muscle?
Yeah.
building?
So not only do people falsely suggest that carbs are required for exercise, well, yes, they are, but not dietary carbohydrate. You don't need to consume any carbohydrate in your diet still. Your body is still capable of producing all the carb that is required itself. That is the design, gluconeogenesis. But we've had, no carbs. So that's how we evolved, our ability to make all the carb we need. And in fact, because carb is toxic, pouring in carb on top of what we need is only going to cause inflammation, toxic reactions, the storage of fat, etc., etc. It's not a good thing. So we don't need it for the exercise. We can make our own. Then they'll turn around and say, oh, yes, but we need it for recovery because you need the insulin action to get your muscles growing, etc. To which there are two responses that people need to understand. Number one, muscles, which is what most people are trying to build when they're exercising, muscles, what are they made from, Sean?
Protein.
Carbohydrates or something else?
Proteins.
Proteins, amino acids. Yeah, not carbohydrates. Oh, yes, but you need the carbs for the insulin action to get the body to absorb the protein and use it to build muscles, they say. Well, that forgets something, doesn't it? So you take in protein, that causes a slight gluconeogenic bump, if you like, not like a spike like you'll get from eating carbs, like a sleeping policeman, like one of those. That will cause the release of some insulin, and that insulin will cause the uptake of protein into the muscle cells. So you still don't need it for that either.
Right.
Oh, yes, but you need to replete your glycogen levels, they'll say. Well, again, the reason that we exercise is to get a training response. What is exercise? Exercise is pushing the body beyond its current capacity, pushing it out of its homeostatic comfort zone. It's a form of mild injury. You deplete resources, you cause micro tears to your muscle fibers, you get cardiovascular responses in terms of your oxidative pathways, your mitochondria, etc. You know, you get those kind of things happening. You get metabolic things occurring. And what your body does is it repairs itself slightly better, slightly stronger, slightly more resistant to a perturbation away from the homeostatic comfort zone, so that next time you do an exercise bout like the one you've just done, your body doesn't get injured by that. That's why you progressively increase your intensity to keep that training response happening. So if you then say to your body, right, now I've stressed you out, I've caused this injury to you, instead of saying to your body, right, Charlie Brown, now you sort that out and make yourself better. If you pour a bunch of carb down your neck in terms of the glycogen resynthesis thing, all you're doing is shortcutting that. You're telling your body, don't bother getting any fitter because Charlie Brown here is going to pour carbs down in my neck after this, so I don't need to get better at gluconeogenesis. I don't need to get more efficient at that. It's okay. It's fine. It's taken care of.
There's a guy that's actually I've been conversing on the channel recently with, and he's one of the only people and probably one of the biggest misrepresented, I guess, groups of people in this space that I've ever seen. He's actually underweight and trying to put on muscle, you know, and so he's having an issue. He's coming from the complete opposite side of most of us, you know, and trying to build muscle. So oftentimes, you know, I feel like he doesn't get a lot of the information. Obviously it's the same. Put the correct nutrients in and go to work. You know, it works the same way. Those 60, 70, and 80-year-olds maybe getting on carnivore, are there any key points for them to do differently than someone maybe younger than them, you know, when it comes to the carnivore diet, particular need of anything to add to their regimen?
There's a couple of threads I'd really like to pick up on there, Sean. And the first one is that there aren't many forms of damage that the human body undergoes that is genuinely irreversible. Now, at some point, we all become decrepit. We all get to a stage where the breakdown processes in our body outpace our renewal and repair processes. That's what aging is. At some point, our lives end. We all die at some point.
Right.
What we can absolutely do is have a very, very meaningful impact on the rate at which our renewal processes slow down and our breakdown processes build up. We can stave off that tipping of the balance towards a slide into senescence and eventual death. We really can have a very significant impact on that. There is a video on my channel called 4 Health Hacks, where I'm on the thumbnail going like this to show you there's 4. There's actually more than 4, obviously, but this is my top 4 at that time when I decided, let's look at these, put them in some kind of order of importance. What they're all based around is reducing a person's chronic systemic inflammatory burden. It's inflammation that is the ultimate root cause of the breakdown of the human body over time, over years. It is inflammation that interferes with the body's ability to renew and repair itself, largely for the vast majority of our lives. Only at the very end of our naturally occurring lifespan will you find that there's a genetically programmed slowing down of the renewal and repair process, really. Although there is a slide into that, it really only becomes obvious at the end. Now, also, when you look at, or when you talk to people in the know in terms of comparative anatomists, physiologists, biologists, people that understand different animals and compare those to humans in terms of what we've got going on genetically and structure-wise and all of that, you ask one of these people who knows what they're talking about, actually, what is the natural expected human lifespan if we would just get out of our own stupid way and live according to our genetic design, they'll tell you it's like 130 to 150 years, actually.
Oh, wow.
Now, our lifespans are a lot shorter than that because of our lifestyles being divorced from the natural design, the biological design. So these 4 hacks that I've put in place are, number 1, a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, that being 100% carnivore, consisting of the muscle meat, not organs, muscle meat and associated fat of large ruminant animals, mostly. Other animals for variety. In my case, a large ruminant animal equals beef, basically. That's what we've got. So beef is 80 to 85% of my diet. Beef, muscle meat, and fat. No liver, no organs, muscle meat and fat. The other 20% is all other animal sources combined. Fish, poultry, pork, lamb, whatever else. Small amount of dairy in my case, very small amount. And very, very occasional transgressions like a plate of blueberries. I know, hand in my card, I never really was a carnivore and I did it wrong, whatever. Fine. So species appropriate, species specific, anti-inflammatory diet. There it is, right there. Number 2 is the consumption of a range of nutraceutical products that I support. I advise all my clients that they should be on, of all ages and all health conditions, actually, because these products are involved in A, reducing inflammation directly, and B, encouraging your body to release your own adult stem cells, those blank cells with your DNA, which then turn into brand new cells of whatever kind your body needs as part of your renewal and repair process. And those new cells, when they do differentiate from a stem cell into a fingernail cell, a muscle cell, a brain cell, a heart cell, not hair follicle cells, apparently, but anything else just about. Those new, yeah, great. Those new cells have full length telomeres when they differentiate. That means that cell and all its progeny going on from there start at biological age 0. So I'm now well into my 52nd year of life. A lot of the tissue in my body is not remotely of that biological age, precisely because for the last 13 years or so, I have taken this product, which is releasing my adult stem cells, which differentiate into new cells with full-length telomeres at the time. So a lot of my body is no older than 13. And much of it is even younger than that. Some of it was released yesterday with biological age 0. So get yourselves on the Cerol products. We'll flick a link under this video so people can just go straight there to the shop, basically. So that's number 2. Number 3 is ground yourself electrically. Sounds like woo-woo, sounds like crystal waving, hairy-legged hippie stuff. It's not actual science there.
We were actually talking about that in our private group yesterday. Somebody was actually bringing up the grounding, and I said, I can't prove anything about the grounding. I don't know anything, as far as, what it's going to do beneficial, but what could it hurt? I mean, you're getting outside, you're grounded, you got your bare feet on the ground for an X amount of time. You're in the sun there, how could it hurt,
Exactly. Look, I've also got another video, which is also one of my series of in 5 minutes or less videos, which looks specifically at the grounding issue. And there are 19, I think, from memory, 19 videos that are cited in that 5-minute video that underpin why is grounding a good idea. All right, so there's that. So that's number 3, ground yourself electrically. Number 4 is blocking out blue light after dark. So when the sun goes down below the horizon and before it comes up the next morning, orange lenses, not yellow and certainly not clear. These clear blue blockers, computer glasses that supposedly block blue wavelengths but don't distort the color. If you can see blue, it's not blocked, is it? Dark orange lenses, okay? Number 5, the right amount of the right exercise at the right intensity on the right schedule. That's my top 5.
That's something I got to do better on. Like I've been so focused on, getting to a healthy weight. And honestly, I never thought I would get to this size. I started at 457 pounds. I mean, I was really sarcastic about getting to 190. That was my goal. I was like, yeah, Ken Berry, if this works, I want to be 190 pounds next year, but I'm excited about it. And, but I do need to get to working out. That's something that's very important and something that I need to do a lot more of.
You and me both, brother.
What drives you whenever you get sick and tired of doing this, whenever you don't want to film the videos, whenever you don't want to go on the live show, when you don't want to whatever, what is it that drives Bart Kay at the end of the day?
Right. There are several things. Number 1, there is this constant, voluminous torrent of excremental garbage being sluiced forth onto the unsuspecting public every day. Every single time I look at the interwebs, I come up with 10, 15, 20. Within as many minutes of searching, I find that many videos of people saying inane things, stupid things, ignorant things, evil nonsense, basically. Evil nonsense. So that fires me up to carry on, because this is a fight that we need to stand up to. We need to look this thing square in the eye and say, no way, Charlie Brown, that is unacceptable. So that kind of keeps me going. I need to put a roof over my head and, feed myself and family.
Right.
So that keeps me going. Like it's my job to be a YouTube influencer and a consultant one-on-one to people who want to consult with me and ask questions about health science and get a second opinion on this, that, or the other thing. And thirdly, it's actually the most important of my income streams, actually. It's neither the YouTube nor the consultancy. It's the Cerol business, the one I was talking about before with the stem cell enhancing supplement and the attendant anti-inflammatory supplements that go along with it. And also that opens up the possibility of me to do much more philanthropic works. I mean, the work of doing Cerol business, promoting this product, is in and of itself philanthropic. It is a public service because people need to know this stuff exists and the power of it, what it can do. It can literally turn back the clock in many respects biologically. That is not a therapeutic claim of any kind, by the way, because the FDA won't allow therapeutic claims of any kind. So all we can say is, with peer-reviewed evidence, this product does exactly what it says it does, and that is the stem cell product causes the bone marrow to release those stem cells, whereupon they do their magic. And the anti-inflammatory product causes a reduction in the 2 major inflammatory pathways that humans experience because of their lifestyles. That is a win, and people need to know that. So that keeps me going, because if I say, screw it, I'm not going to do it anymore, anyone that I would have got to from that point on might not have anyone get to them, and it might be that their health slides so far that it's too late for that person. So as long as I have strength, as long as there's life in my body, I will keep doing it because it's that important. So there it is in a nutshell. Those are the things that keep me going.
Where people finally get to the point where all the testimonies that everybody, and that's a lot of what I urge. If you have experience with eating this way and changing your life, put your testimony, say something, because the studies that are you're combating whenever you put this kind of a message out all the time, or you try to share your story, all those studies that they have right now are funded by people, the pill pushers and the big food companies and these things. They're the ones funding the studies on the issues that they're funding them about. So it's a big circle. And so the testimonies of people who are living this life, who are doing this way of eating or taking the medication, they have to say something. And that experience that they have, and the testimony that they can offer, is much more beneficial than a piece of paper that came out of a lab one day that potentially has the effects that it has or whatever.
Yeah. So, look, any piece of paper that came out of a lab, you can guarantee straight away that it's been bought and paid for by somebody. Mm-hmm. Science is expensive. It costs a lot of money to do science. Mm-hmm. Who's got money? Industry.
Industries, yes.
So industry funds science, industry owns science. Therefore, there's kind of a joke that's often thrown around, but it's not a joke. It's just an irony. It's a true irony. And that is that 99 to 100% of all scientists agree with their source of funding.
100%. That's right. Absolutely.
As someone who has been an active research scientist for more than a quarter of a century, I can tell you that nutrition science in particular is busted beyond belief. It's broken. It cannot be trusted as far as you can throw it. Don't be sucked in. Don't be a fool, basically.
You heard it right here, guys. And so, I mean, you even covered the last question, that, the second part of the question in your answer. So that's good, man. So I appreciate your time, man, and all. And it's always good talking with you. And I appreciate you shooting it again and everything with me. I even told all the people on my channel, I said, I have to write myself a big note from the last time. I said, imagine this, guys. Imagine you get all these things to benefit you on carnivore, and then you have this whole conversation, and the only thing you walk away is a picture of your face like, oh my gosh, did I not hit record? Like, I was like, it happens.
It's easy to happen. No drama. Look, it's my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. Always good to cross-pollinate. Always good to get the message out there to as many people as we possibly can. And you're doing God's work, Sean. Keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you, buddy. Right. I can't wait to do it again sometime.